Before the Ideas Network really started, we had talk shows. Then we had, but we had to have more of them. So this was a group of people that were moved into this service once we decided we were going to do it. And in the center, with sitting backwards on at the chair, is Tom Clark, who did the morning program for many, many years. And I regarded Tom as the centerpiece of the station, that he's personified what we were trying to do. That's why you put him on the morning. He understood exactly what we wanted because that's what he wanted. That's the kind of radio he believed in. And so he was essential. Without Tom, I don't think we would have, first of all, we wouldn't have the nerve to do it. And second, he did it very well. Gene Faraca had been doing an afternoon talk show, sort of 1 hour. Gene is the person to the far right. And we moved her to the morning from 9 to 11. Larry Mueller, who was the fellow with the big W on his chest, had been doing the farm show on WHA and the state network since 1967. And it was a half-hour farm show. In the 1980s, we turned it into an hour-long talk show. And then with the start of the Ideas Network, we made it an hour and a half. So he started at 11. So we had Tom, Gene, and Larry. That was the lineup. And then in the afternoon, we still carried more, All Things Considered, for quite a while. Ben Marins was hired as a reporter on economics in the news department, and we based him in Milwaukee. And then so he did a half-hour evening business program. And then Jan Weller, who's the person on the far left in the sweater, Jan was an arts reporter for WPR, did reporting pieces. We moved him to Milwaukee to do an arts-oriented talk show at night, after All Things Considered, from, say, 6 till 8, I think it was. And so that was the core that made up the original lineup for Wisconsin Public Radio later. And that's the original morning team. We started off hoping to have two voices in the morning, two different hosts, Tom Clark and Joy Cardine. Joy had come down from our Green Bay bureau and was willing to do this, and but it didn't work out very well. And the reason, I think, is that we were trying to do several short segments. We were 10-minute segments, and Tom would do one, Joy would do one, Tom would do one. It was fast moving. It was hard to produce because you had to get guests for all these things. So it just didn't work very well. So after a few months of this, we decided that it really would be better off if we just let Tom do it. And Joy went off doing some administrative things and did a great job with that. But so this was the original team for a few months at the beginning of the Ideas Network. And here's Tom again, this time with his partner Zorba Pastor. We did a number of like how-to type shows, and Zorba was one of several guests who did weekly shows, appeared on Tom's weekday show. And we decided it was so good when he was on that we created a whole separate show for Saturday morning, Zorba Pastor on Your Health, with Tom hosting that along with him. And that became a national show. And another regular guest, this one on Larry Mueller's show, was Trish McConnell, who was an animal behaviorist, still is, and she was just delightful as a personality. And so that program, we said, this is really good too. So we took Trish, gave her her own program with Larry on Saturday morning. So Zorba and Trish were these two personalities that we pulled off the weekday shows and created them shows on the mornings against Morning Edition or Weekend Edition. Weekend Edition had been very strong there, so we got rid of Scott Simon, put him on the other network, and these two very strong personalities did very well. Now, this came later. We wanted at the same time that we had one of these local shows, we wanted to do some national project. Now we had Michael Feldman's What Do You Know? We added to that Zorba and the Pets show, but we wanted a show that showcased Wisconsin as a place that is good at intelligent talk, which has always been our strength. And so we decided to create a show that was not based on any particular personality, as Zorba and those shows were, or Michael Feldman. That's all the personality, and those people leave, the program's dead because it was basically their personalities. We wanted something that would live beyond personalities and could go on indefinitely. So we came up with this notion of we wanted the highest end, the most intelligent discussion program on public radio. It was our position. We'd be the best. We'd be the most intelligent. Maybe not the most accessible always, not the most popular even, but the high end, set the standard. And the program was called To the Best of Our Knowledge. And we had co-hosts at that time with Jim Fleming, who you see on the left, and Margaret Andreasen, who was somebody who had worked for us, had done a call-in show. It's the old Homemakers show. We used to have we had the farm show and we had a Homemakers show. And Margaret inherited that from a number of other people. And when Margaret took it over, it didn't have a whole lot to do with how to get the spots out of your rug. She was much bigger kind of issues. Very nice on-the-air presence. And so she and Jim co-hosted that show for several years. And then when she retired, Steve Paulson and Ann Strangeshamp started doing additional interviews, and we had Judith Strasser came in and did some. So Jim became the sole host, and then there were a number of other interviewers. Oh my, here we are in Green Bay. This is our Green Bay office, just about the time the Ideas Network. Well, this would have been before the Ideas Network, because in the middle 80s, before we started the Ideas Network, we set up a system of bureaus around the state that would be, prior to that, we'd been strictly in Madison. And so we set up the Milwaukee office, which became a key part of the Ideas Network. And then we had these reporters around the state who were also on the air morning edition hosts. And what we see here are young versions of on the left, Joy Cardine. She had been the morning host in Green Bay, and she needed, for personal reasons, wanted to come to Madison, and she was a great addition here. The woman next to her is Connie Walker. She was hired to be our Appleton host. We had an office in Appleton as well as Green Bay, and Connie was that individual. When Joy came down to Madison, we closed the Appleton Bureau and moved Connie back up to Green Bay. And so that's what you see here is the Green Bay staff when Connie was up there. In the middle, sitting down, is Glenn Slatz, who was the manager in Green Bay. He had been manager of WGBW, which was the University of Wisconsin Green Bay station. And when we absorbed that station into Wisconsin Public Radio, he came along with it. And that happened in several other places around the state. They were university stations, and they had some small staff, not very many people. In fact, I think Glenn was like a one-person staff. And that station has now been replaced. WGBW has now been replaced with WHID, a much more powerful station. But that's what Glenn's job was. He's now retired. The man in the middle is a jazz host. They did some local programming up there, and I believe his name was Paul. And he did a jazz show in the evening. I frankly didn't know him, but they had several hosts. They still do. They're still up there. And finally, on the right, looking very debonair, is Rick Ryer, who at that time was our underwriting person in Green Bay. And then he went on, he moved to Wausau and became the underwriting person for Central Wisconsin and then the regional manager for Central Wisconsin. And now his job has expanded so that he is the regional manager in Wausau and Green Bay and still does some underwriting. So that's who those folks were. So that's pretty much it. So those are some of the faces that helped make the system possible. But, of course, you don't hear the voices, which was really what made it good.